What's up everyone? Today's video is about a topic that has always fascinated me. Why are generational clashes a thing, and is there a deeper meaning to what generation each of us ended up in? If your parents or grandparents have ever argued with you about how easy your life is compared to theirs, you are far from alone. It's almost a universal occurrence. The older generation criticizes the younger one for being too soft, too dependent on modern conveniences, not liking the right type of music. Insert next topic here. Boomers judge millennials, millennials judge Gen Z, rinse and repeat. My dad was born in the northern Italian countryside at the tail end of World War II, and my mum some 7 years later, both in conditions of crushing poverty. As a child, my dad's way of securing a meal for the day was having to knock on doors of people in the village, as, since you might have guessed, this wasn't provided within the family. By the time he was 11, he was cycling 7 miles to school and back every day, no matter the weather, probably wearing the same clothes for days on end and bathing in the local fountains or in the river. And here's the twist. My dad's story does not end in hardship. After surviving undernourishment and subpar levels of health as a child and in his formative years, he then went on to live through a period of unprecedented economic and technological growth, the post-war economic boom. Thanks to a sponsor who believed in him, he was able to pursue his education, a rare privilege for someone from his generation and from his background. He inherited the house that he had grown up in and that we eventually grew up in, which he proceeded to rendering unusable through his hoarding disorder, as some of you may know. Leftover resentment alert here. He supported a family of 4 on a part-time teaching job and had more than enough time to become a leading local figure in all the fields that made him feel alive, namely local sports coaching, leading of local associations, local politics, often, leftover resentment alert here, to the detriment of us, his own family. Yet, despite all this, the conversations that me or my sister have with him often circle back to one theme: his belief that younger generations are weaker because they didn't enjoy the hardships he and the people his age had to face. He repeated accounts of childhood struggles are often framed as a badge of honor. He scoffs at my and my niece's reliance on technology, regularly reminding us that having all you need at the tap of one finger breeds laziness and not ingenuity. And whilst there's truth in his analysis, I've always felt somewhat compelled to challenge it for a very simple reason. It lacks objectivity. My dad's opinions, same as everybody else's, lack perspective due to his cultural conditioning. What my dad's narrative often omits are the misfortunes of the generations before his own, who had to endure a number of things that he never had to, and this includes the people who, fought in wars, had to migrate to the other side of the ocean to escape famine, or toiled in fields into their old age without ever, at any point in their lives, seeing the societal progress that he benefited from. This omission is important because it's easy to focus on one's own generation's struggles whilst losing sight of the broader historical arc. It's called chronocentrism. And it's the belief that a given time period is more significant, more critical, or morally or aesthetically better than other periods in the past or future, all just because what? You grew up in it? Kind of the same as ethnocentrism, but with time rather than space. Reality is, spoiler alert, you're not that special, and nor am I, and nor is my dad. I can happily keep believing that the 90s were the best decade in history, but it doesn't make it an objective fact, or does it? Something else that my dad seems to always conveniently overlook when telling his stories are the one advancements that he readily embraced during the economic boom. For instance, he didn't hesitate to install an indoor toilet in his home, abandoning the so-called character building tradition of an outdoor farmhouse latrine at the end of the backyard. He didn't continue cycling miles to work when he could own a car, nor did he leave the television set to be an item the ownership of which was reserved up to then to local bars and clubs, but he made sure to procure one for his own household and did not stop to consider the ethical impact of this shift on the community, despite being a man of the people. When I make these points, he often acknowledges them, at least temporarily. But there's a second layer to this debate, and this time it's one that compares the disadvantages of my generation compared to my dad's generation, as weird as this may sound. For me and my sister, it was far more sheltered and comfortable growing up than my parents. But then the tables turned dramatically when it came time for us, and especially for me, to become an independent adult. Because instead of stepping into a flourishing post-war economy with countless opportunities for whoever had enough work ethics to take them, like my dad did, and believe me when I tell you that Northern Italy, or ex-Austria, is a land of really hard workers, my generation faced having to become independent in a stagnant job market, in a country with a notoriously low amount of opportunities for entry-level workers, and possibly even lower professional mobility. And this was during one of the most economically challenging periods of the last few decades, the 2008 financial crisis. In my early 20s, unlike some of my peers who remained comfortably sheltered and financially supported in their parents' households, I found myself juggling up to 4 jobs whilst pursuing my education, and eventually decided to move abroad, to the UK specifically, in search of a more sustainable way to find opportunities. During this time, complaining about the challenges, guilt trips I received from some members of my family when I became an expert, and worrying about the fear that inevitably came with this choice, or worrying about all the things that could potentially go wrong, wasn't part of this journey. Instinctively, I always knew, even then, that every situation, no matter how harsh or stressful, had its purpose, and resisting the parts of my circumstances that I could not control would only squander the precious energy that I needed to sustain all my different endeavours. The rest of my experience living in a foreign country, and trust me when I tell you that it didn't come without its challenges, is something that I've always received with immense amount of gratitude and appreciation. Not because it was easy, but because the levels of growth and connection that came from it were incredible. Some deep reflection on the history of humanity and how my personal experience fits in the bigger picture was brought about by the recent discoveries about my family tree. This is a discovery which unfolded through Nera, hello, our historical family neighbour. Our families have always been closely intertwined. Her parents were my father's godparents, my sister and I grew up alongside her children, Leo and Gabri, hello, love you guys. And she became my niece's godmother, eventually. She's an avid scholar and philologist, and she has dedicated years to curating the works of her late uncle, the very renowned 20th century sculptor Marcello Mascherini. In the last several years, she's also been carrying out an extensive exploration of her family tree, uncovering connections between our lineages, starting from my great-great-grandfather, which is our common ancestor. More recently, she started out research into my great-grandmother's ancestry, which links me to a few unexpected villages' family lineages, but above all, when tracing back to the 1700s, revealed profound insights on 2 particular ancestors of mine who have left an indelible impression on me. The first ancestor, we will call him Ancestor Z, was born in 1748, and during his life he endured a long series of heart-wrenching tragedies. His first 3 children, born between 1779 and 1788, each passed away before reaching their first birthday, likely to the rampant infant mortality that plagued that era. The misfortune deepened when his wife also died, possibly due to complications of the last childbirth, a common peril for women at the time. Despite the profound losses, Ancestor Z exhibited remarkable resilience. In his early 40s, not common at that time, he chose to embrace hope over despair and remarried to his second wife, whom we will call Ancestor G. Ancestor G also was gifted with remarkable resilience. She was a widow and had also lost multiple children to illness. The offspring generated by the second union is the one that laid the foundation for my great-grandmother lineage, originating my parental grandparents, my dad, myself, my sister and my nieces. Reflecting on Ancestor Z's and Ancestor G's unwavering determination in the face of relentless adversity fills me with profound gratitude. This two people's willingness to rebuild and persevere despite the overwhelming grief and no longer being in the bloom of their youth has directly contributed to the existing of me and my life today. I also almost didn't survive as a child due to a kidney condition that could have either killed me or left me unable to walk. If I hadn't been born at a time when the specific surgery I underwent had just been invented. So when I look back at the countless twists of fate, the profound losses, and the fragile decisions that shaped our ancestors' lives, I'm reminded of just how slim the chances were for me, for you, for my dad, and for anyone else to be here. Way beyond what generation we happen to be part of and what perks or troubles it came with. And if we're here against all odds, maybe that means that we're meant to be here for a reason. See you soon.